So soul sickness or whatever. That's when that there's this real sense of like this greater depth in you that is just undergoing like this radical suffering.
Yeah.
Um,
And like this separation of viewing it all. Like,
yeah, you talked about. Let's talk about that real quickly before we get into Sisyphus. But the second disembodied person who's watching this whole thing happen. He talks about that. And this is not, I want to really make a distinction here if people have read like Eckhart Tolle or something like that, Power of Now kind of stuff.
yeah.
The Silent Watcher. This does not seem to me to be the Silent Watcher. I have an associative mind, and so I often will just immediately, and I was like reading him say that and thinking immediately about that, and then thinking, no, this is not what that is. Like, this is some other dude. And just from my Lacanian psychoanalytic perspective, there are lots of different, intentions, persons. Really, things that are part of who we are. So, like, what our ego calls us requires us to push out a lot of the difference that's in us, all the different disunified impulses and affects and ideas and voices that are in us, so that we can, name one of them us.
What are you saying? Like the ego pushes that?
Well, in order to create a unified sense of self.
Yeah.
So, in order to objectify, so like make a closed sort of like object that appears as visible. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So, the unconscious is the part that
like something definable.
Yeah, exactly. Like,
okay.
I'm this kind of person. Like all the ways in which we identify ourselves. Mm-hmm. So like, all the way in which society, the big other, identifies us. Calls us by. All the ways in which we identify with those names, and all the ways in which we don't.
Mm-hmm.
So what the ego is, Freud put it pretty good. It's like it's this protection formation that is basically our way of surviving in the world. So we have to believe that we're a unified self, so that we're competent and are able to perform, have intentions and carry them out or whatever. But we're not. We actually are deeper than that.
Yeah.
Depth might not be the exact right metaphor, but like there's just more to us than that. And so it sounds like whatever that is, that excess, is kind of like a body beyond our body or whatever, that's not an object, was being sort of like like we just was like in pain or whatever.
Yes, I identify with that, and he says it's a wraith-like observer. He writes, a phenomenon that a number of people have noticed while in the deep depression is a sense of being accompanied by a second self, a wraith-like observer who, not sharing the dementia of his double, is able to watch with dispassionate curiosity as his companion struggles against the oncoming disaster, or decides to embrace it.
Well, you know what? Actually, that is the Silent Watcher of Eckhart Tolle. So I was wrong. Okay, so yeah, I will link it up then. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So that is what that is. All the things we've talked about and read or whatever, you'll notice that in a lot of the different, mystical thinkers that we've talked about, recently this second person has been called the Silent Watcher, but it's like this. It's also been called, as we've studied, like the seat of consciousness, or the consciousness behind, the like actor, so it's a kind of like there's your body and like the self that does things in the world, is related to the world, and then there's this removed kind of like, I don't know, consciousness that is
Yes,
like
that
watching,
watches that
that
person.
watches that. So
Yeah.
that is, and unless I'm wrong, that sounds like what he's talking about.
Why do
there.
you think he referred, like we've said silent watcher before? He
Yeah.
states it a wraith-like observer. It's,
Well, it just means ghost-like. I mean, it does have a negative
Okay.
connotation.
Yeah,
but like,
that-
yeah. I mean, so a wraith, so that was more like from Celtic mythology or whatever, as like a sort of.
it's like more than an observer. It's like an active participant in your depression.
Well, see, yeah, that's what I didn't get. Like, it seemed like it seems like in that description is watching the depression from a detached way, which would be the silent watcher. Not like. So wraith might be the term that's screwing us up here, just
Okay.
because, we're associating the wraith with, like what we think of as like a sort of ghost, which would be like some kind of unfinished business sort of a thing or something like that. But
Well, at the end it says, or decides to embrace it.
yeah, and that's the part that even brings me closer to the silent watcher
Okay.
guy, because it's like that. Or maybe it makes it further. We'll just have to think about it,
Mhm.
because like the like some versions of this seat of consciousness has this level of not being uninterested but disinterested, in the sense of like it's not that it doesn't care. Like, that's a really important distinction. So like, is this embrace like deciding to care about the suffering person? Or is this embrace like just taking it on to the level of like dropping into it? So like they're one of the ways in which this silent watcher gets explained is like this person that you have to separate out
Yeah.
and find through contemplation, meditation, whatever, through these various exercises.
Staying in the present.
Yeah, all that kind of stuff, and then and that person maybe can collapse back in depression, so that you no longer have this separation.
Okay.
So it's very possible that what he's talking about here is like the decision to just like end this sort of like position from which you could see it in some kind of like objectified way, like here's this person suffering, or do I drop into the suffering? You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
and then once you've lost that separation, for a lot of these guys, especially these new age guru guys, like that's a problem. You want to stay outside of it at all times,
Mm-hmm.
as much as possible, and as long as you're in this like kind of detached position from your life, where your life like a loose garment, however you want to put this metaphor, you're able to navigate it. The problem is when you get caught up, when you get sucked in.
And I always knew that was one of the things that's followed me through my through this is wanted to spend time as the silent watcher and watching
Tom suffer.
That's right. It seemed like I had, I don't know, maybe I would have a chance of more control over my depression, or more opportunity to get better if I did that, but it was impossible. I just was.
You're getting sucked back in, and
Always.
like so, like a lot of guys.
I know a lot of
This
people.
is not me. This is actually one of my biggest problems with some of that stuff. Is like a lot of guys would encourage like just practice staying outside of yourself in that sort of detached, self-alienated position. But for me, first of all, it's impossible. Like this is exactly what we're talking about. Like this total inability to like stand outside of yourself, because that's what suffering is to me. Even when you're in like just straight physical pain, is you're no longer like detached. You're like in it. You're you are, yeah. And so first of all, it's not possible. But the second thing is that I don't know how desirable it is, because for me it was always a question of, is the silent watcher compassionate? And in a lot of these traditions like Advaita Vedanta, which we talked about a little bit, or just non-duality in general, the idea is like that what's this ultimate seat of consciousness is compassionate. So that if it drops into a particular person's suffering, like you, or into a particular person experience or whatever, it's like it's because of love.
Right.
It's because of care. It's not because of I mean, this was one of the biggest complaints that we have gone and talked about in our group, is just like this sort of dispassionate, you know, uninterested, or not, sorry, I did that again, disinterested position is, it seems almost cruel. Like, and it seems like, what is the relation then to my suffering of this consciousness or whatever?
Yeah, there's, for me anyway, it's not possible that it's disinterested or non-compassionate. Like, it wants to help.
Yeah.
I just want to be in that. But I think for me, it's, I looked at that as an opportunity or a possible way of helping me.
Yeah, so the conundrum that we talked about, and is that it's not possible to stay out, but it is necessary to get out of it enough to even realize what it is.
Yeah.
From an outside.
Absolutely.
So a perspective in yourself that's outside of yourself at the same
Yeah.
time. This sort of like central contradiction. I mean, that's what we're doing when we're talking about our experience. You know, where we're kind of like stepping outside of the direct experience of it, and we're trying to put names to things. We're trying to express things, even if it's like a poetic way of talking about it, rather than a scientific way or whatever. And we're not trying to, like, you know, make everything perfectly understandable and certain and predictable, which is like the game of science. We're trying to be just like more descriptive of it, so that kind of admitting like our lack of, you know, mastery over it, and lack of mastery over ourselves. But
yeah, I think the poetic approach is more helpful.
Well,
the scientific.
Me too. That's certainly the turn I've gone. But yeah,
you know,
but it also is dangerous, because, you know, even the terminology of Dark Night is a poetic way of thinking about it. The terminology of Darkness Visible, you know, is a poetic way of thinking about it. I mean, that's nonsense to science. I mean, you know, the point of visible and visibility is just a straight nonsensical contradiction. But, you know, it opens up something for us.
Understanding.
That allows us to deal with it and talk about it, and, you know, like.
And I think that's the first step in dealing with it and talking about it, is the understanding of what the person is experiencing. Yeah. And that's, again, what I found this book. But I think it's more effective, like, poetically, like that Job.
So that would be sort of like a mythological approach to understanding, which, you know, just in my history of religions background, that's the most interesting one to me.
No, I think that was a great story.
And so, like, there's a way at accessing something that's true, that's not like scientifically true in the sense of like corresponds with some independently verifiable third person.
Oh, they need more dopamine levels.
Yeah. So this is
levels,
which is important too.
Absolutely.
Right. Yeah.
Absolutely.
So like we're gonna get into that in you know, part 2 or 3 or whatever.
Okay.
Yeah.
Let's do, since we were talking about suicide, let's go into
Sisyphus, and then we'll wrap it up for today, I think. Yeah.
Sounds super.
And we'll get back to it.
Man, we do have a lot more to talk about.
Whew, unbelievable, right?
Yeah.
So he talks a lot about Sisyphus, which is something that you would do, I think, especially he seems to be somewhat conversant with French culture. I'm not really sure why. I don't know much about him, but he received. I mean, the occasion of, you know, a lot of this book is that he's receiving a literary award in France. So, and he, you know, some of his behavior is really off.
That's when it first strikes him.
Yeah, right.
That's when it comes on to him.
Yeah, so, Camus, French author. Anyways, you know, and he said he had an opportunity at one point in his life to meet him, but it fell through because Camus died in a car accident, and there was a lot of speculation even around that car accident that, you know, there might have been some recklessness as a part of it that was like sort of like, whenever you see like extremely reckless driving, you know, what's your tendency to think, oh, there's some sort of suicidal intent.
He was driving with the son of his agent or something.
Yeah.
But he was known to be a speed freak.
Speed freak or whatever. So, you know, again, who knows? Like the unconscious has reasons for things
Yeah.
that are, sometimes hard to like get a hold of, and that's by definition hard to get a hold of.
Yeah,
Yeah,
there's a couple. I got some more to talk about with that.
for
but
sure.
yeah,
Yeah. So, anyways, like I mean, it's sort of like the Camus defines in this essay, longer essay. I think it's just considered a longer essay. It's not a book, but anyways, the myth of Sisyphus. You know, whether killing yourself or not is like um, justifiable, like through philosophy, through thinking about it or whatever.
Well, yeah, the way I took it is like he said that is the philosophical question.
Oh yeah, no, he does say that.
Okay.
Yeah. So like basically the whole. So what does that mean? That means that like
Yeah, what does that mean?
we started thinking, in a way, like philosophically at any rate, in order to decide whether our lives were worth living, and which is controversial because like, well, I'll just say from an anthropological, like scientific reason, the reason why we think is because we are prediction machines and we want to reduce uncertainty in our environment. And so that any other thinking that comes after that is epiphenomenal to that, so that like those, it's got to be somehow derived from that. And so it's a real reversal of like why we think. So it's not like we think in order to like reduce uncertainty, make better predictions, like basically transact economically with our environment in the most efficient, way possible or whatever. Get the most bang out of like whatever interactions we're.
With more certainty.
Yeah, right. So like
Trying to achieve that, yeah.
yeah, exactly. So that we this investment, that whatever nowadays would be, but back back before all that, you would just be like
I got to go to that part of the woods to kill that animal.
exactly, because I
Tried other.
exactly right. Probably I've got this prediction machine
That's
kind of
right.
brain where
Okay.
I can like think in terms of like animals' likelihood of being there, like
Yeah.
all that kind of thing. Think in terms.
Is that right? Is that the same kind of thing?
Exactly right. So like it's a kind of direct denial of that. That's what our thinking is for. At least we can make a separation. There's at least a separate kind of thinking that is deciding whether making accurate predictions, reducing uncertainty, living at all is worth it in any way. And this is going to relate real directly to Sisyphus. So in Sisyphus, he's what's a Greek myth, punished by the gods. This poor dude Sisyphus, and he is pushing a rock up a hill.
Why is he punished by the gods?
It's a transgression of some kind. I can't even remember right now, but I think it's some kind of a version of like the Prometheus, like stealing fire from the gods kind of a thing. It's basically pissing off the gods, and I'm trying to remember. It's not exactly Prometheus, but I don't know.
He did something.
I don't remember. Yeah, right now I'm just totally blanking.
Got them riled up.
Yeah, right. Yeah, exactly. And they had all kinds of famous. I mean, for Prometheus, he was a god, so like his like liver would get eaten while he was like fully sentient by an eagle or something like that every day, and then it would heal and grow back, and then it would get eaten again. Like
That sounds horrible.
Yeah, for all eternity. So like,
And he was a god.
And he was a god,
But he wasn't the top god.
No, well, none of them. I mean, Zeus technically was, but a lot of them could check each other's power.
Oh, really? Okay.
There was a lot of machinations, let's just say, within the pantheon of Athens. So like, there's all kinds of, or Greece, let's say, there are all kinds. Gods were doing stuff to each other all the time, and I can tell you, Prometheus was being punished because he.
Like the Real Housewives of Gods.
Oh
Maybe
God, worse. Yeah, unbelievable. And because he had stolen fire and brought it to people, which is why like Mary Shelley's Frankenstein is called, the subtitle is like modern day Prometheus. Also, kind of like the Faustian mythology deals with the devil or whatever, Mephistopheles or whatever.
Okay.
But also popular within German circles of the 17th century or whatever. Is this idea of like having taken something that is too excessive for people. So stealing knowledge in Faust's case, scientific knowledge or whatever, In I guess in Prometheus's case as well, having stole the fire, it allows people to cook food. All of a sudden, it's used in warfare. It's like used to stay warm, move into places where human beings weren't adapted for. So a lot of people, it's thought of as a sort of like.
So why would he be punished for that?
Because he's making people more like gods or more able to approach gods or whatever.
Okay.
Yeah. So.
All right, Sisyphus.
Yeah. So being punished for something like that, but I don't remember what. And
his punishment was pushing a rock up a hill.
Yeah, for all of eternity, and he would push it up. I guess with the hope of like, here's my task. So it kind of discloses for a lot of people the nature of human desire, which is like you have this goal, this intention, which is to push the rock up the hill, whatever. But it's like this totally pointless thing because every time he gets to the top, it gets pushed back down, and he's got to go back and bring it back up. So it's this kind of like picture, Camus was considered one of the first existentialists. Not many of these people called themselves that, but Sartre did, but not anybody else. But anyway, he was considered that because it's this key moment, at least in French existentialism, which is the absurdity of life, just like the pointlessness of it all. And the way that it's articulated in its depression, its relation to depression, is that we think that we have these goals, these intentions that we want to fulfill, and they're totally, they don't have the meanings that we think they have.
Once they get fulfilled.
Yeah, right, exactly. There's just like there's this inherent futility to life and to will. So famously, this is what gets dealt with in a lot of the literature we've been looking at. In Buddhism, for example, the entire concept of suffering is desire. So that like desire isn't fulfilling in the end. So like you can't end desire by getting what you want. You can only end desire by ending wanting. Is the concept.
Okay.
So like you end desire by stop desiring, and so that's all the ascetic practices that we looked at and are going to be looking at more.
Okay.
But like anyway, the futility of it, and the way that Camus explicitly puts it is what we have come to understand in our modern age of rationality and science or whatever is that life is ultimately purposeless. So this is what's sometimes called the material reduction, or just like sort of a purely material, scientific understanding of the world. Like, it takes away any mystery, any romance. This was what the romantics were reacting to. Whereas this, increasing, let's call it instrumentalization of the world, so that it's just everything becomes like tools for use, like just for like basic economic value on things. There's no longer any like mystery to anything, so that sometimes it's called the disenchantment of the world. Right now, supposedly, for I don't know how long this has been, over the last 20 years, there have been large communities of people on the internet talking about a meaning crisis. It's also been the title of a lot of religious studies, I know, conferences, and it's also been a call for people. This is where the whole neo-trad thing comes from. People going back to like a more enchanted way of living, a more religious way of living, to try to rediscover some of that mystery.
Yeah. Give it some meaning.
Give it some meaning again.
Yeah.
So, even starting as early, in the United States with somebody like Joseph Campbell, like doing the whole like, kind of return of the importance of mythology to our lives or whatever. And so, obviously that's a sort of depressive state when you're in this position where you think, classically, what's one of the things people say about depression is like the world becomes devoid of its meaning. One of the beautiful literary examples, for William Styron is Emily Dickinson talking about the emergence of this, or the presence of this certain slant of light, that all of a sudden the whole lighting of the world changes so that it becomes this very desolate kind of a place.
Yeah.
It's just this pointless kind of a struggle.
Yeah.
And you kind of just like, I mean, it's like almost like coming down off a high, off a mania, and then just all of a sudden, you know, sinking into the depressive position where things just seem pointless or whatever.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And so for, you know, Camus, like the way he articulates it is like, we have to have two simultaneous realizations at the same time to be authentic. I mean, and again, this is an important part of French existentialism at any rate, which is the concept of authenticity. So, which is sometimes called secondary naivete, but it's like this idea that you have to lose like the enchanted world. You have to go through the you know, the anti-religious kind of becoming scientific to lose like this sense of purpose and this sense of like sacred, this sense of the holy. You have to go through that, which is the dark night. In other words, and so like when you're in primary naivete, you're kind of in a Edenic state where you believe that like the world is this, you know, very like naive, sort of childlike, you know, relation to the world or its place. The fall then would be, you know, to sort of like lose that childlike wonder, that sense of magic, of religiosity, of the sacred, and then you wind up in a kind of depressive state. What you have to do though is you cannot go back into the garden. You know, the garden has got, you know, giant angels with swords guarding it or whatever, and you can't find it anyways. So what you have to do is you have to re-enter the garden in an oblique way, which is one of the characteristics of mystics, this sort of sideways way of getting back in, which is called secondary naivete, which for Camus is articulated as this full realization that, you know, life is merely physical, merely material, merely transactional, that and ultimately for nothing. So that, you know, like you listen to a scientific description of life, which is like this, you know, high above equilibrium homeostasis. So like our intentions ultimately, whatever highfalutin intention you think you have, it's ultimately to, you know, return your body to this physical preferred state of homeostasis. And also, you know, from an evolutionary biological perspective, to either survive or reproduce. That's sort of like, you know, ultimately what everything is about. So that everything else is sort of like this happy illusion that, you know, sits on top of that necessary process, or at least everything else is unnecessary.
You know, well, thank you, Marty. That's some good stuff. I don't know. I don't know if it relates to it, but I think it does. I was thinking, you know, early on in my recovery, you and I had many talks about, and I think my low point, and I guess I did hit bottom coming into the program, was the divorce and removing myself from this house where family was very important to me, as it is all of us, but it was my choice to leave. The kids were in high school, and I thought it was the right choice. I think again it was this searching for an answer to my depression. Like I said, in 2018 it hit me. I left the house in 22, so I was trying everything for 4 years with my former wife. We were trying everything, and you know, and I was like, oh nope, it's not working. The answer must be getting a divorce, and that was cool for like 6 months or so. But then it really came down, and that was, you know, we had to go through this extreme loss, this losing everything, to get to this point of rebirth, or, you know, doing something or changing our lives or making a choice, coming to that choice of, should I end it all, or is there something we're fighting for? But I had to get to that point, and I don't know, you talking about that just reminded me of that path.
Well, totally. Yeah. Well, thank you. Yeah.
And I don't know. It was. We were married 19 years. A long time. We were. I was early on in recovery, and we used to always go camping as a family, and Lisa had taken the kids down to Burr Oak State Park to go camping, and the van broke down, and Ruby had to go try out for the softball club at OU, like real close, and Lisa had planned to take her, but she couldn't because the van was closed. So I went down there. I think it was the most painful moment that I ever felt. Drove up to their campsite, and it was early on, like when I was just acting tripped out. I was in sobriety, but a really tough relationship with my kids and just the way I was behaving. And I drove up to their campsite, and it was on this stretch where we had camped before as a family. And just driving up on them and seeing those three camping without me, and Lisa having trouble with the van, and I wasn't there to help them. I'll never forget it. It was the most painful moment, one of them in my life. So, however this philosophy is and how it intertwines to this depression, I'm still in the process of making the connections, and I think that's the point of this talk is to make the connections with this philosophical part and depression. But I wanted to mention that just to convey the feeling of hurt.
Yeah,
I felt.
Yeah, for sure, man.
Yeah.
No, I feel that. I mean, obviously not the way you did, but I hear that. I've been in situations.
That's right.
So different situation, but still, relatable stuff. Yeah. With just alienation from a sort of family and that kind of a thing.
Horrible.
So yeah.
Horrible. And I don't think I ever reached a point of there is no purpose in life. I couldn't find the meaning in many things. But the stopgap, like I mentioned before, is, how can my kids be meaningless?
Yeah,
how
right.
can they have no meaning?
Exactly. Yeah, that's the nice thing. As long as your brain, can stay enough, I don't know if it's your brain, well, your soul, stay open enough to receive that counterexample. Whatever examples you're piling up.
And there's a ton of them.
Yeah, and there's a ton of them. Yeah. That. As long as you can hold on to the few, examples of that don't fit whatever story you're telling.
Yeah.
And it's interesting to me that you kind of tell a story to to show how that works. And that's how we get at the truth of things, because every story, contains certain ways of understanding, but then there's always a part of that story, certain things that escape whatever our intention for it is.
Yeah.
And then, we are able to, be saved by the fact that we can't ever totally close on or identify whatever, and that, because of that sort of irreducible sense of ambiguity or sense of affect or whatever that is beyond our
Okay, but I could tell myself stories. I mean, they made total sense to me. Looking back, they were not
Yeah, well, I mean, it definitely reminds me of some other bad advice that I gave you that we'll get into later. But like, I'm always concerned about, because it's something I do, and I'm always worried about how we tell ourselves stories is through the lens of nostalgia. And so, this becomes another big interpretive framework for the way that I understand, especially when I see guys going through, which I do all the time, loss of family, loss of, familiar situations, whatever, just loss in general, is like there is this tendency, and it's not 100%. Again, none of these things are like totally definitive, but there is this belief that things were the way they were, and a lot of times there's this nostalgic kind of distortion going on to where we imagine something in a certain way once it's gone that it wasn't that way when we had it. So yeah, we'll definitely.
We talk a lot about that distortion, but
yeah.
After what I got from previous conversations with you, it's like after reading the book that maybe that distortion wasn't as distorted.
That's right.
As you had thought.
Yeah, that's right. Well, not for me. I mean, just to put it very simply, I just thought you were like a lot of the other guys that I talked to, saying like I screwed up my marriage, like I lost this really important thing, and I was just like thinking to myself, it's very common for people to like, blame themselves for the whole thing, and like imagine that they had this perfect thing that they just went and blew up, and that
like wasn't reality.
Yeah, that wasn't reality. Yeah. So like, but it, especially after reading the book and seeing some of the ways that he like became so mentally incapable of like, I don't know, good decisions or whatever, like purposely self-sabotaging himself, that I started to wonder about if that was a better lens to like look through like what you had done, or what you were going through and whatnot. So yeah, it was another way I kind of have backed off of something that was like totally, totally ironclad in like the way I looked at the world.
Yeah.
Like I basically thought every form of nostalgia is just like bullshit, poison. And then that. Like I always said that. Like whenever somebody started like talking about like whatever, I always that was always the lens I saw.
That's not
those
true.
Things in. Yeah.
It really wasn't like that, and there was definitely some truth in that.
Yeah.
But there was some untruth in it as well for me.
Yeah. So yeah, that's a level of indeterminacy that I'm totally willing to, get with. I'll just say this though, and then so to wrap it up.
Yeah.
So that is a common thing with this meaning crisis thing as well for me, is that I hear a lot of people, especially with the neo-trads, and this is like kind of where I get this from.
What's neo-trads?
Oh, right, neo-traditional, like people going back into the church, and like not just going back into the church, but like going back into traditional ways of being in the church.
Okay.
And like getting getting back a way of like being in family too. That's like like very traditional or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, like in my church, which I'm no longer a practicing Catholic, but like watching converts go in and like being more Catholic than the Catholics or whatever has been a thing within the church, but like it's like apparently like at a different kind of, at least it's what you see like a lot of influencers talking about or doing or whatever. It's like one of the solutions to having lost the center of your life, so that people growing up now, they were just like on, they didn't have any of that. Like I had all that, and I saw like like that I didn't want it
right.
in the end or whatever, but like, and so like I kind of read into a lot of people's experience, especially when I hear people talking about like reestablishing these kind of like ways of being in the world, re-enchanting the world. It's sometimes explained.
Sounds kind of cool.
Yeah. But it's like it romanticizes some real bullshit.
Yeah.
And we'll get into that later.
Okay.
And so like for me, like,
is it the answer?
you can't. It's an example of trying to get back into that primary naivete the wrong way. You're trying to get back into Eden, but it was Eden wasn't Eden until you lost it. Like, and so like it wasn't like that, you know, ever. It only became like that retroactively. And it's a lot of what we're talking about here is how like
it is.
retroactivity.
And there's some truth in that, for sure.
Yeah. So like anyway, so like that's and I see a lot of guys who like see all like their marriage having been a certain way, as like people use the past as like a really a defense mechanism to not deal with things that were really bad. So a lot of people imagine whatever marriage they had is like perfect, and they don't see like that, and they just got sick and like blew it up or whatever. They don't see that there was like all kinds of dysfunctionality going on.
There was, but like I was depressed then. Like that affected that retroactivity. Like that was a factor.
It totally does. It's a lens by which,
But it's a reality too.
Yeah.
Like it affected me getting a divorce.
Yeah, right. So you were in. I see what you're saying. You were, and this is something that this is what we're going to get into in part 2 for sure.
Like that's the danger of that nostalgia. It's not, it doesn't consider. I see some truth in the nostalgic thinking, but it's more than that. It's what was my condition,
Totally, yeah. And William, I was not for his last name. Styron, like, he was apparently in an amazing relationship because the woman put up with all the shit, or whatever, and so like whatever moves he was making that would normally blow up a situation like that.
She was there.
And also, I mean, in the addiction community, whatever, like we're always talking about like blowing shit up, like how we do that unconsciously in different ways. So like like I just again, exactly right. Yeah. So like I kind of like look through things in that lens as well. But like never until like really like talking with you, like never did I even like think for a second that there was a possible way that you did really take a really good situation and actually like, blow it up. I just never, I never really.
Yeah, maybe I did. Maybe I
couldn't believe it because I've never seen it like in my life, at least the way I look at it. Like, and that's why I give the example. There's so many examples of it in the neo-trad thing, but like it's really cool to think about it in terms of the Sisyphus thing because Camus, I don't agree with Camus' solution, but like it shows it like something that refuses to go back into that nostalgia, refuses to go back into that primary naivete. So he's not like talking about becoming primitive again, ridding ourselves of rational thought and scientific thinking or whatever, and just becoming naive and like believing in fairies and whatever again. Like that's all gone. And it was always my idea too that never really was either.
Right, yeah.
Like I mean I get it. Like people had sort of beliefs in these kind of things or whatever, but like I'm sure they were also always questioning and all that kind of stuff.
Even when they were in it.
Yeah, even when they were in it
Absolutely.
or supposedly in it or whatever.
Yeah.
So like, but it's at the very least not a solution of like, going back into like being a kid, because believe me, in the history too of like, 21st century, try to like approaches to like getting back there. There have been some really bad ones. Like people really do want to like, give themselves like sort of like lobotomies with medicine so that they were like, reduced to a sort of psychosis, like
really
whatever. Yeah, just there's all kinds of stuff. Like there's a very naive way too of thinking about, this modern resurgence of psychotropic, psychedelic, as a kind of return to Eden or whatever. Yeah, so like all that stuff. There's one way of looking at it. It's not the only way, but like as a kind of like trying to recapture a certain like naivete or Eden like way of being in the world. We can talk more about that too, okay. But like and it's not a solution for me.
No.
And so with all the complexity aside, the secondary naivete for Camus is understanding that your deepest desire is that life is meaningful. Like understand that is what your soul is. It is this intention that things be purposeful. but that your intellect absolutely can't be denied. You have this understanding given to us by scientific reasoning and development over the years that life is not like that. It's this total and you have to, in order to be authentic in this sense, you have to understand how ridiculous it is while you embrace it. So it's just this total complete contradiction. And so it requires this kind of stepping out of yourself and into yourself that we were talking about, where we have these multiple ways of being just within our own self. But there's got to be a childlike view within you, and there's also got to be the part that totally knows that that's not true. And you've got to kind of be in the world in Camus' way as if it were meaningful and enchanted and whatever else, that it had a reason, even though it doesn't at the same time, which is a tough trick to pull off.
Yeah.
So it's not that's not the version of the solution and that's not the only way to find a secondary naivete. So that's not mine. I'm just saying, we're just right now, and so this is why Camus decides life is worth living, is because we can live in this secondary naivete where we decide not the purposes and the meanings that are given to us by religion and our tradition and by whatever spiritual kind of ways there were in the past, but by deciding on our own purposes.
Yeah. That's the second.
Our own projects or whatever. That's a secondary naivete.
I like
even
that.
Though even our own purposes are also in the end totally meaningless, we have to we have to suspend our understanding of that to some degree.
I don't know if I can agree with that.
Yeah, so that's the that's where it's part of what I don't agree with also.
Okay, good.
Yeah, so I mean we'll get into that, but I guess the end where we can stop, and I'll just ask you if you got anything further. But it's just that his solution to the question of suicide is that it's not necessarily the implication of having the fact that the world is meaningless revealed to you.
Mm-hmm.
So that when you get into this, what we would call a very traditional depressive state, where you realize that things are bullshit, and I don't want to say it's too far, but I don't want to say it's too near to the idea that we get an AA where you fake it till you make it kind of a thing, except that there's never any real making it where you're actually in the total throes of belief. You're always kind of, for Camus, you're never totally returned to some naive belief in the goodness and value of the world or whatever.
Good. That's that journey, the striving for.
Yeah.
You'll never get there. Well, what if it's something like desire? You get there. That's not all it's all cracked up to be.
Right.
It's the getting there.
Yeah.
That is the cool part.
That's what we'll get to for sure. So.
I think I really enjoyed this talk. There's a lot more things to discuss, but I think in the end it's just time. I gave myself time to get through this, and I mean that is essential, but not always easily